They say childhood should be filled with laughter, dreams, and innocence. But mine ended one evening when I was only 10 years old. I still remember the sound of my mother's voice in the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, and then the heavy footsteps of my stepfather walking into my room. That was the day my world changed forever. Hi everyone. You are welcome to my channel. If you like our stories and similar infidelity stories, please do well to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. And if you are already a subscriber, thanks for stopping by, and do not forget to turn on your notification button so as to get notifications anytime we post our stories. Now let's dive into the gist. He was supposed to be my protector, the man who married my mother after my father left us. To everyone outside, he looked like a strict man, a hard worker, and a provider. But behind our closed doors, he was a tyrant. He beat my mother often, and his voice ruled the house like thunder. And when his anger wasn't enough, he turned his cruelty toward me. That night, when it happened, I froze. I wanted to scream, to call out for my mother, but fear glued my lips shut. When it was over, I curled up in my bed, shaking, feeling like a piece of me had been stolen. And then it happened again and again, until it became the dark secret that shadowed my growing years. The hardest part was not just his touch, not just his threats, but my mother's silence. She knew. A mother always knows. I saw it in her eyes when she avoided looking at me, in her trembling hands when he was near. One day, I gathered courage and whispered, "Mom, please make him stop." Her eyes filled with tears, but she whispered back, "If we fight him, he will kill us." Her words cut deeper than his cruelty. She chose fear over me. She let me carry the weight of his abuse alone, while she stayed silent. From that day, I realized that my mother could not save me. I would have to survive on my own. As years passed, I wore a mask. At school, I laughed with friends, I studied hard, and I pretended to be normal. But inside, I was broken. I hated myself for being weak. I hated my stepfather for stealing my innocence, and I hated my mother for letting him. Every night, I prayed for escape. I told myself that when I turned 18, I would leave that house and never return. But scars don't disappear when you walk away. They follow you, whispering in the dark. And even when freedom came, I still carried chains of shame. It took 13 long years before I found someone who made me believe in love again. His name was Daniel, and he became the reason I finally opened the cage of silence I had lived in all my life.
It took 13 long years before I found someone who made me believe in love again. His name was Daniel, and he became the reason I finally opened the cage of silence I had lived in all my life. I met Daniel when I was 22, at the small bookstore where I worked part-time. He walked in one rainy afternoon, tall, warm-eyed, and carrying the kind of smile that seemed to melt walls. I tried to keep my distance at first. I was used to building walls around my heart. But Daniel had a way of looking at me like he saw through the mask. He asked about my favorite books, made jokes that pulled laughter out of me when I thought I had forgotten how to laugh, and showed kindness that was steady and real. Unlike my stepfather, unlike every man who had hurt me in silence, Daniel was safe. When he asked me out for coffee, I almost said no. I was terrified of being touched, of letting anyone too close. But something about him felt different. So I said yes. One coffee turned into many. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, I let him in. I told him small truths, like how my father left when I was little, how my stepfather was strict and harsh. But I didn't tell him everything. The bigger truth sat like a stone in my chest, heavy and unspoken. After a year, he proposed. The ring wasn't big, but his love was. When he slipped it on my finger, I smiled through tears. He thought I was crying from happiness, but deep down, I knew fear was mixed in. If he knows what I've lived through, I thought, he'll leave me. But love has a way of pressing on wounds. With every gentle touch, every patient word, Daniel made me feel something I hadn't felt in years, safe. And that safety pushed me towards something I had avoided all my life, telling the truth. It was late one evening when the secret became too heavy. I sat in the corner of our small apartment, my knees pulled to my chest, tears slipping silently down my face. Daniel woke up, rubbed his eyes, and came to me. "Nina," he whispered, kneeling beside me. "What's wrong?" I wanted to say nothing. I wanted to smile and hide. But the weight in my chest cracked me open. The words rushed out like a flood I could no longer control. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice trembling. And then I told him everything. From the first night when I was 10 to the countless times after. I told him about my mother's silence, her fear, her failure to protect me. I told him about the shame I carried, the years of silence, and the anger that still burned inside me. When I finished, I couldn't look at him. My hands shook. My heart screamed that he would leave me, disgusted and tired of my broken story. But instead, he pulled me to escape. I told myself that when I turned 18, I would leave that house and never return. But scars don't disappear when you walk away. They follow you, whispering in the dark. And even when freedom came, I still carried chains of shame. It took 13 long years before I found someone who made me believe in love again. His name was Daniel. And he became— "Nina," he said softly, "what he did to you does not define who you are. You are not broken. You are the bravest woman I know. And I love you, every piece of you." His words wrapped around me like a blanket. I sobbed into his chest, years of silence spilling out with each tear. For the first time, I felt free. Free because my secret was no longer a cage. Free because I was seen, loved, and not abandoned. That night, I slept in peace. Not because my scars were gone, but because I no longer carried them alone. Telling Daniel was the first step. Healing was the journey that followed. He encouraged me to see a counselor, to write down my pain, to face the memories I had buried for so long. Some days it felt impossible. Some nights I still woke up crying. But Daniel never let go of my hand. The hardest part was my mother. For years, I carried anger toward her. One afternoon, I stood in her kitchen, the same place where she once ignored my silent cries. My voice shook, but I said the words I had carried for years. "You knew. And you let him hurt me." Tears ran down her face. "I was weak, Nina. I was afraid. I failed you." Her apology didn't erase the past. But in that moment, I realized she too had been a victim, trapped in fear, broken by a tyrant she couldn't fight. I chose to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine. Carrying anger was like drinking poison every day. Forgiveness was the only way to heal. Now, at 23, I wear my scars differently. They no longer shame me. They remind me of my strength, of what I survived, of the voice I found after years of silence. When I look at Daniel, I see more than my fiancé. I see the man who stood by me, the man who showed me love doesn't hurt, love doesn't silence, love doesn't abuse. Love heals. My story isn't pretty. It's filled with shadows and pain. But it is mine. And I tell it now because silence once chained me, and I will never live in silence again. Have you heard or experienced similar situation? Please tell us how you handle it in the comment section, and do not forget to turn on your notification button so as to get notifications anytime we post our stories. Thank you, and see you in my next video.